Very true. Hey everyone, I'm really excited to be here today because I'm talking about something that I do pretty much every day with startups, and that's smoke tests. And yes, like Dave said, don't get the wrong idea. Basically what it is it's helping to shape your product roadmap by using growth experiments in a pretty fast way. So let me just tell you a little bit about my background. Right now I'm a distribution hacker in residence, which basically means that I work with startups on helping them get early stage traction, all the way into later stage traction and operationalizing growth. And it's an awesome thing for me to do because my background is basically just being a scrappy hustler and starting a couple companies. So my first company I started in college, which was a laundry and dry cleaning delivery service, of all things. And after that, I co-founded a company called Curebit, now called Talkable. Some of you may know it as the referral program for like Tom's Shoes, Bonobos, Shutterfly, stuff like that. So I think before getting into process on smoke tests, I'll give you a little bit of a story of like why this is so important to me. So if I had to say that I'm passionate about anything, it would be like the intersection of product and growth. And that's kind of a hard place to live because on the product side, you have, you want everything to be perfect. You're always focused on the user experience, making sure that you're not pushing too fast. And then on the growth side, it's all about pushing fast and sometimes not having perfect products. So in this story, in my first business, essentially it was just like one of the many mistakes that you make as a young entrepreneur. So I had just won this award called Global Student Entrepreneur of the Year, and my head was really swollen, and I thought I could do no wrong. There was all this press. The business was called Garment Valet, and essentially what we did was we picked up and dropped off laundry in a more tech-friendly way. So we had this dilemma where we were growing really fast, and the quality was really bad, so we kept losing customers. Not a good thing. So basically, my business partner was standing on one side. He was standing on the product side, and he was saying, I think we should just not market anymore. And I was saying, no, like we just have to push more. We have to find the right customers. But ultimately, we fell prey to groupthink, and we decided to just stop marketing. So we stopped spending any money, and we said, okay, we're going to automate everything, and it's going to be amazing. And that's basically what we did. We went into dry cleaning facilities, and we made these automated conveyors that were run by iPads, and then we had our delivery drivers that had the iPhone apps, and then these digital lockers that we put into dorms, and we spent a lot of money. And we were like, okay, automation is done, now growth's gonna happen. And it didn't. And the problems were still there. So what basically happened when we built all these apps is that sales basically stayed flat and cash went down. And cash went down in a really bad way. We were burning about $30K a month. We didn't have venture money, so this is basically all on like our credit cards. His dad put some money in. It became a pretty depressing time because we thought it was going to be the end. Then one night, I was hanging out in the office, probably drinking some whiskey with this guy, Ryan Bloomer actually, and we started looking at the numbers, and what we figured out was that all of our revenue came from these 4 spots in Boston. Everybody else, and we were servicing the whole city, everything else, we were losing money. So we basically sent out an email that night that said, hey, everybody, basically if you're not in these four areas, we're no longer servicing you. And if you're in these 4 areas, basically what we're gonna do is we sent them an email, we said, hey, we want you to tell your neighbors and we're gonna pay you. Of course we said it in better terms than that. And pretty much within a month, we went from -30 to +10. And what that taught me was that we didn't have a product problem, and we were letting product drive our growth strategy, rather than letting our growth strategy and our marketing, who we're selling to, drive our product strategy. So 1 year wasted. We learned a lot, but it was one module. Lost a lot of money, but that's okay. Got experience. And I think that we've all been here. I guess if you haven't been here, you're doing awesome. You can just leave the room. No, but if you haven't been here, you probably will be here. And what it is it's when growth is slower than we want. And as a result of that, we say, oh, well, we just need this one more product. We just need this one more feature. And if we get that one more feature, well, then that means that we're going to have more growth. And then your product backlog gets longer and longer. And then you have a hard time prioritizing it. And then the energy that you would be spending on growth sometimes slows down. And then when you release this product, you expect that boom, like everything's gonna be awesome, and this is gonna be what like kicks us into hyperdrive. But what usually happens is you get like, this piddly little flame, and if that, or it's a spark, or nothing. And then fingers start getting pointed, and expectations get destroyed. Team morale starts to go down, and this is what I call the product growth dilemma. And basically, the point of smoke tests is to kill that shit before it kills you. So this smoke test is not really a new concept. Smoke tests, literally, if you're an engineer, are what you do before you release product to make sure everything works. It's been popular, with a lean startup, with prototyping, but in this sense, it's for a marketer. And what we're trying to do basically is just prove that your backlog is actually worth moving forward. So just to give some credit to the guys who came up with some of this stuff. Then about a year ago, I was fortunate enough to hear Brian Balfour's scientific experiment process, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard, and it's just awesome, and it just changed the way I think. And so I tried to apply that same mentality to running smoke tests. So now when I work with startups, essentially what I try to do is I try to come up with whatever the minimum proof is that we're trying to accomplish with no engineers, using the right traffic, figuring out what conversion would actually be and how we're going to measure it. Of course, figuring out how we're going to optimize that and make a decision. And steps 5 and 6 rotate back and forth because oftentimes your test is not valid and it doesn't make sense the first time. So let's go through the first step about proof. Proof is really hard and it's really important because the first person you're trying to prove something to is yourself. Because essentially, if you don't know what it is that you're trying to do and you can't explain that to a team of people, then you probably don't really know what you're doing. So proof usually starts with a hypothesis. So by doing X, I expect Y. So here's an example where a real estate agent who just kills it, who's doing really well, he had a hypothesis that if he made a Tinder app for matching real estate buyers and sellers to real estate agents, there'd be more transactions. He's like, I have this great development team. They're only going to charge me $100,000. Do you think it's a good idea? So I said, well, hey, like before we do that, let's just throw up a landing page. So using something like Unbounce or Instapage, you can throw up a landing page in a couple minutes. And my hypothesis here was just, if people click download, then they might want this app. So that was proof point 1. So we threw this up, and the thing is we have to do this with no code because people expect an app if they get it in the App Store. So it's a little messed up to not give people what they want on the next step. But I convinced myself that this is just one more proof point. So my X and Y here, if people really want this, then they will put their email in for early access, and they'll click submit. Turns out not a lot of people did that. But nonetheless, it's another conversion point in the funnel that you're trying to measure. So the really important part here is finding the right audience. And I think that there is no better way to find the right audience than to see if people share what you're showing them. Because if people do share, that means that they're willing to tell their networks about what it is that you're doing and they believe in what you're doing. And sometimes that can get skewed if you incentivize this. And I spent 3 years of my life trying to figure out, should we incentivize shares and how do you incentivize shares? And this is when I was running the referral business. And this to me really matters because it helps guide the audience that you're creating. So on Facebook, if people aren't sharing after they come in from an ad, then I know it's probably the wrong audience. Whereas like from a search ad, if they are sharing, maybe the intent is higher. And so it helps guide your decisions of where you put money for your experiments. NPS is another really popular thing to look at here, but most startups are too early to actually do valid NPS. So I just like to look at share rate, which is literally just how many people see the button to share and how many people actually do. Really simple. Keeping score, I probably don't need to tell anybody in this audience how important keeping score is, but if you're not tracking specifically where people are coming from, how they're interacting at each stage in the funnel and on which device, it basically doesn't make sense to do smoke tests because you're never gonna actually know and you're basically just gonna be spinning your wheels. So always use some sort of analytics tool and actually think about what you're trying to track before you do it. The hardest part here is always figuring out what the next steps are, because there's always trade-offs we take. As startups, lots of times the tests that we do are not statistically significant, and we don't have the volume of visitors, and we can't afford the volume of visitors, and we don't have the time to make these decisions. So the trade-off is that your test might not be perfect, and you have to kind of have a gut instinct for it. So that being said, lots of times you land on maybe. And that's why the iterative process of constantly coming up with different tests against each other is really important, and you can do it all really fast. So an example of that, some friends and I were going to go out kayaking one day, and we were really hungry. We couldn't decide what we wanted to eat. So we said, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could just push a button and somebody would deliver us a surprise meal? So we threw up this landing page, and it had terrible conversion rate. We drove Facebook traffic there. Less than 3% of people entered their email. And it's no wonder. The problem here is that we're telling people that we don't exist, but we want your contact information. So we looked at the type of traffic. It was mainly mobile. This was a desktop site. We made another iteration a couple of days later, which was just mobile. And the only question we asked them is, what's your zip code? So 30% of the people entered their zip code here. And on the next page, 25% of the people entered their email. And then 10% of the people shared. So if we had not done that iterative approach and tried different things, we would have immediately said, oh, this business sucks, we're not going to do it. And happy to say that my friends are now actually going to launch this business, which is awesome. So a really tactical example of a company in the 500 portfolio that I want to share, which is really tied in to more than just validation of a product, but actually like adding a product into your existing business, is from a company called Pigeon Box. So Pigeon Box delivers love, and what that means is they allow parents to send their college kids care packages. And they are in the accelerator company, and they're also our first investment in the distro fund, which is awesome. So I've been working with them as their kind of like interim head of growth, and one of the things that they wanted to do was they wanted to do this add to box feature, where they figured, hey, we're sending all these boxes out to people. Some people have more money, some people might want more products. And we said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. A lot of other subscription businesses do this. We should give it a try. So in terms of giving it a try, we're like, okay, well, it's Tuesday. Let's block some time out on Friday when we have a calendar, and we'll think about how to do this. And then we realized, well, now we're going to spend 2 weeks designing and developing this thing because we don't have an extra engineer to work just on this. And then it's going to take us a week to test and release this. Well, like, guess what? That would have been June. Last box gets shipped at the end of April. So we would have just totally missed the boat. So instead we said, well, hey, let's just go into the store, figure out what products we have in extra inventory, put them into an email, send them out to customers, and see if they click this one link. And if they click this one link, we get a signal in our system, which is basically we manually charge them the extra money. We throw it into we send an Excel sheet to the people who are in the warehouse to just add it to these boxes, and we'll just see if this works. Turns out it worked really well. Almost 10% of the customers converted and did the actual upsell, which is about 45% of extra gross profit for them, which was awesome. Now, if we hadn't have won, that would have been fine too, because we would have still won, because we would have felt good as a team that we didn't waste time, and we didn't waste money, and we would have learned more about our customers. So it's this type of process and approach that I find really, really valuable, because it's so easy for me to, especially on the product side, get so focused on the perfection and what the product should feel like, and make all of these assumptions that people are going to use it without actually testing and seeing if they are going to use it. So that's the way I spend a lot of my time. If you guys have questions about smoke tests, if you ever want to talk, you can follow me, you can email me. And I think if there's one key takeaway, it's don't let product hijack your growth. Rather, use growth as a way to drive your product roadmap. And I think I'm done a little early, so I have some time. I have like 4 minutes for questions, which is awesome as far as I'm concerned, if anybody wants to talk about anything. Or not. Yes?
What advice do you have if your product is already live and you're thinking of like dramatically pivoting it a couple different ways, and you don't want to necessarily have landing pages that have your own brand that are kind of very different from the thing you have, but maybe it should be that way?
So if I can paraphrase the question, it's if you have an existing business and you're thinking about pivoting it, but you don't necessarily want to like distract your existing customers, how do you suggest actually learning without doing damage to your brand? Is that right? Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly like what your business is, so I can't give you like tactical advice, but theoretically, you could always set up landing pages with different brands or like sub-brands, product names, and then divert new traffic that you're buying you're not optimizing for price, you're just optimizing for learnings to these pages to see how they react. And then you could kind of try and measure, are the people that are reacting actually the same as the people that are buying from me now? And you might even be able to get a subset of your existing loyal customers that are willing to like do questions and like talk to you about that. Talking to your customers is such a, not everybody, I always forget to talk to my customers. And it's like, wow, I can just pick up the phone and ask people what they really think. Yeah. Anyone else? All right, oh, someone in the very back. Wait, 1 second, we'll get you a mic.
What's the minimum threshold that you need in order to consider that a viable sample size for?
That is a question for Pep. So this is something that we have a problem with all the time because we can't, if we have a limited budget, you can't buy a whole lot of traffic because you just don't have the money. And most of the tests I'm talking about are not anywhere close to being statistically significant. And I'm comfortable with that because we're running different iterations, and as a team, we're always coming up, it's kind of a gut instinct. So the minimum is really like, when have you proved to yourself and the other stakeholders that are in this business with you that you're comfortable moving in that direction? And rarely in an early stage startup does that have anything to do with statistical significance.
I would say that at least a few hundred actions, at least.
Told you. Good answer. And we're good. Thank you, guys.